Hi, hello, and welcome to the Living Martial Arts podcast with me, the Dark Master. I'm really excited. I've got a great guest for you today. I'm excited for a number of reasons, because he's not only a martial artist, but he's an author as well, with a book that I'm actually very, very interested in, because he's very interested and very knowledgeable about the fitness side of exercise, which obviously incorporates martial arts. But anyway, we have Mr. Shane Fitzgibbon. So how are you doing, Shane? You okay?
I'm wonderful, thank you. It's a nice dry day in Galway, which is saying something.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we've had some great weather. We've got some lovely, lovely weather here. And I've been out this morning. I've been doing some resistance bands this morning and doing a bit of training. I like to train early in the morning before anyone else is around and the air is nice and fresh. So we get a bit of I don't know, I have a green gym all to myself. It's actually the local park, but there we go.
Oh, lovely.
It's nice. It's nice. Well, I'm going to kick off as I always do with asking about I know a little bit about your martial arts journey, and I have shared a little bit of time with you over the years at tournaments, and also in Africa as well at one point. But perhaps you could just, tell the listeners a little bit about your martial arts journey, how it started and how it developed.
Yes, so it's actually I think it's a nice story. I had become friends with a guy in my neighborhood when I was around 12, 13. And we were just hanging out at my house one Saturday morning, and he announced he had to leave because he had to go to a taekwondo class. And I had never heard of taekwondo, but it sounded martial art to me.
Yeah.
So I asked him about it, and he gave me like a 30-second spiel on it. And I asked him, could I come down and watch the class? Because I'd always wanted to do martial arts. Like Bruce Lee was all the rage, still in the early mid '80s. So I came down anyway, and I watched the class, and I signed up the next week.
Excellent. Well, it's funny, isn't it? Because Bruce Lee is probably responsible for a lot of people doing martial arts worldwide, and also David Carradine in the Kung Fu series. I was saying to someone, I actually bought the soundtrack to Kung Fu and nearly wore it out. I've still got it on vinyl. So, where did you go from then? Once you started, were you very sort of competitive? Were you competition minded, or was it something that you enjoyed the exercise part of it?
I very much enjoyed the camaraderie part of it. I made some really good friends through the taekwondo, and I didn't get exposed to that many competitions at the beginning. I think I was a yellow belt or green tag when I did my first one, and I came third place. I got this lovely big trophy, nearly as big as me. I was delighted. It was the Cork Open, I think, and so I was delighted with myself. And then there was a few club competitions. I was a green belt when I did the next one. I really enjoyed them. I loved sparring a class. I did, and I guess I was quite a physically strong teenager. I was sparring adults quite a lot.
Yeah.
And I didn't think anything of it. Now, as an instructor, I'd be more hesitant to put teenagers sparring with adults. But I thought nothing of it when I was a teenager. I was like, okay, you're sparring, no problem, go for it. And I really did enjoy it. And I think it made me a better fighter because of it, no doubt about it.
Well, it's funny because I often say to my students that martial arts have changed quite a bit, and actually that was quite normal, wasn't it? For if you were young, you just sparred with the adults because there were no separate classes, and I've mentioned a couple of times on this podcast when I first started, I was sort of 8 stone soaking wet. And there were no weight categories, so you just sparred with anyone. and if you think of that now, a difference of maybe 5 or 6 stone, that could be quite dangerous, I would suggest. But it was the norm then.
Absolutely, yeah. We didn't really have weight categories, but back then either. Maybe there was 2, but that was about it. The numbers weren't really there.
No, that's right. Well. So when when you got your black belt, because I mean, I know that you've gone into teaching and you run your own school. Was that something that you thought of as a color belt, or was it something that just happened? How did that come about?
So I actually always enjoyed helping out. It's probably in my blood. My dad is a secondary school teacher, retired now, obviously, and my mom was a piano teacher.
Oh
So
wow!
I guess instructing of some kind was in my blood. And when I was a yellow tag, I was asking my instructor at the time, Grandmaster Dalton, now if I could warm up class. Now I might have been doing something like jumping jacks for 5 minutes and then into stretching, but I wanted to help, and he encouraged that. So as I was going through the belts, I'd be down at the club on a Saturday, and I'd be there for 5 hours because I'd spend the first 3 4 hours just helping out with the children, and then I would do my own class in the teen adult class to finish off the Saturday. So I always enjoyed helping out and teaching. And when I got my black belt, then when I was in first year in college, it was December of that college year, and in March I opened up my first school.
Oh wow, wow, that's good.
So,
Well, it is a different experience for me because when my instructor first asked me to teach, I nearly ran away, and I vowed that I would never come to a class again because it was the worst thing ever in my life. I can't believe after that I grew into it and I started my own school. But that's a story for another day. But one thing I do want to talk about you because I think you're quite unusual as in martial arts instructors because you've authored a book about health and fitness and training principles. Now, most people, particularly within Taekwondo, tend to write books about Taekwondo. I mean, I wrote a book, well, a while back now, 2011. It was actually about goal setting and using martial arts as a tool for goal setting and success that way. So what prompted the book? I mean, I know you're very well qualified in that area. I've seen your qualifications as well. So I'm assuming you thought there was a gap in the market, not the market, but a gap in that sort of knowledge between martial arts people. I don't know. Perhaps you could let us know.
so writing the book, funnily enough, wasn't my idea, even though I really enjoy writing. So what happened was is that as I was competing in the kind of late 90s, but through my 20s anyway, I realized that if I wanted to have a decent competitive career, that I needed to train smart and not hard all the time. So I did a lot of research into different types of training methodology. And the more I learned, the more I wanted to learn. And it was really just about applying it to my own body. And I think I retired. I did my last couple of competitions when I was 38. And I was still relatively, apart from some bad luck, I was pretty much injury free. Nothing really happened to me as a result of poor training. It was always maybe just an unusual collision or something like that. So I had a really good career in terms of keeping healthy. And when I was in my mid late 30s, a couple of people just said to me, Shane, you really need to write a book about this because, and I'm quoting, you're in your what? I think it was 36 when it was first said to me. You're 36 and you're still knocking the snot out of 18-year-olds. You
Yeah,
need to write about that. So it kind of put the idea in my head. And at first I was like, no, 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 I've enough on. So then in my last year of competition, while training, I sat down and I said, okay, let's write about what I'm doing while I'm training for this. And I knew I had planned to just hang up the gloves at the end of the year and just concentrate on teaching. So literally, I spent that year training for the ITF World Championships with the Chijinghua group and for the WKA World Championships in Orlando, and wrote the book at the same time. And I was really happy with both the process and with the outcome. So yeah,
yeah,
that's kind of how
yeah,
it came about. I was kind of cajoled into writing it, if you like. But once I
yeah,
started, I really loved it, and I realized I had a massive library to draw from. And the thing is, strength and conditioning wasn't really a buzzword back then. Now, all you hear about is strength and conditioning, and it's almost vague, I think, at this point. But back then, it wasn't a thing, except for professional teams. And yeah, so now I look back at it and I say, I think I was probably ahead of the curve in my 20s, because most people don't look after themselves in their 20s. They're able to do well in spite of their lifestyle.
Yes.
Whereas for some reason, I was just inspired to try and have a healthy lifestyle. And I guess I was just thinking ahead, you know?
Yeah, sure. Well, it's I think for me, certainly if I knew then what I know now, I would definitely have trained a lot smarter. My philosophy was, right, I'm going to train harder than anyone else in my division. And I mean, don't get me wrong, it seemed to work at the time, and luckily enough, my body was strong enough. I know that some people's bodies can break down very easily. Under strain. For whatever reason, my body did actually last, and it's still going strong, and I'm still training regularly, but a lot smarter now. So is it something that I'm assuming it is something that you try and incorporate into your students now? Is that training smart and giving them some principles to work towards, and maybe at the end of their fighting career they don't have to suffer the injuries that a lot of people do.
Absolutely. And it's also given me a platform for explaining to them that there's ways we can get there. Let's take, for example, press ups. A lot of students, when they come into the dojang first, we can say, okay, let's do 10, 20, 30, whatever it is, press ups. But if a student can't do one press up, there's no point in me as the instructor just saying, oh, you have to try harder, or you have to work on this, or whatever.
Yeah.
We have to learn to say, okay, you physically cannot do a press up. This is it's a health and fitness exercise, but we have to know how we can help the student get from A to B to do a press up. And just throwing buzzwords at them, oh, you have to try harder, bend your elbows, keep your hips up, doesn't really help them a lot. So I suppose the studying that I did in the realm of strength conditioning and gym work and so on, it allowed me to really break things down and say, okay, you can't do a physical press up right now, but now this is what we need to work on. We need to work on your core. So let's hold the press up, because a press up is basically doing a plank and moving up and down while holding the plank. So it got me to look at things and help students to find small elements of success along the way, because the gap between not doing a press up and doing a press up can actually be a massive gulf. Yes. But if we can find 10 little steps along the way, such as can you put your body weight on your fists? Can you just start there? Now, can we hold that for 30 seconds, 60 seconds? Now, can we do a press up by putting your hands up on a chair? So an incline press up. I'm not a huge fan of the knees on the ground, because it takes the core out of it. Whereas I like to get the hands up on a bench, a chair, a windowsill. Now let's do our press ups there and gradually bring it down to the ground. So by building little successes in there, now you can bring the student along with you. And now that's not a huge gulf anymore. It's 10 small little chasms, if you like.
Yeah.
So it gave me little tools for training health and fitness with kids and even adults that I didn't have before. It was just try hard or whatever, and it was my lack of knowledge,
Yeah, sure.
And I've actually the question was, I hope I answered it.
No, you did, because it's fascinating to me. Now, when I started teaching, it was generally a lot of people were older than me, but they were still young. But now, we have in my class, I have from 4, right up to people in their 60s and early 70s even. And that's a huge range. Obviously, they don't all train together. But what I found, and in fact, recently I did a grading for a group of ladies. They're called the Tough Old Birds. And the one of them was born in 1936, and she did. They do fantastic. So the instructor is having to adapt things. So instead of doing press ups, what they do is they use resistance bands. They put them around the shoulders, and they do that. So I think having that knowledge is really, really important. It allows you to look at a little bit differently. Instead of doing the traditional press up, okay, how can we change that, make it a little bit easier for somebody who is in their 70s, but they can still progress. So, I would say I've actually had a look at your book. I would say to anyone, have a look at that, and as an instructor, try and explore that as well. So I don't want you to mention any names, but when you were going around, I don't know whether you watch any classes, and do you see people and you think, oh, I wouldn't be doing that, or oh, because I do.
Absolutely, I do, and training has evolved, and I think it's evolved in a really good direction.
Yes.
We have equipment has become easier. So, like for example, using resistance bands 20 years ago was going to be unheard of because you couldn't get them.
Yeah.
So it's fantastic now that we have access to tools like that we can use, and things like medicine balls and sandbells, because they give us training options for people who can't do body weight yet. They're just not there. They can't support their body weight.
Yeah.
And I'm delighted to hear about you training with people in their 70s, because I actually did a course on training older adults last year during the first lockdown in Ireland. I became friends with a really good personal trainer in California, and he's branched into education. His entire business model as a personal trainer is training older adults and helping them to do fall prevention and balance, cognitive development, all these things. So getting rid of, old people having to shuffle along afraid that they're going to fall, battling sarcopenia, which, just for anyone who's listening who doesn't know what that is, sarcopenia is the loss of muscle and bone density through aging. And that starts in the 40s, by the way.
Yeah.
Scary.
It is. It is. Well. I don't think it's funny, isn't it? Because I would say that what I try and do is I try and keep my education with that type of thing as current as possible. Now, when I started teaching, and again, this is for all any instructors out there, and perhaps you can comment on this. My first instructor's course for Taekwondo, I went along, and we went over Chonji to Chungmu, and that was it. And all of a sudden, I was an instructor, and then I went off. And then I realized, actually, I didn't know anything. So I actually started going to a sports therapy academy and doing courses on soft tissue injury and, that type of thing, and how to look after people better, and massage and all that sort of stuff. And my knowledge just went, wow, like that. And not only did I benefit, but my students benefited immensely. Because my knowledge just increased, and I realized at that time. And when I teach instructors now, I say to them, never stop learning. Go on these courses, go along, take courses on anatomy and physiology, whatever you want to do. But get more knowledge. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a fascinating question, actually. I've obviously, like yourself, I wouldn't have done as many international instructors courses as you, obviously, but I've done a lot, and almost all of them were framed the way you describe. It was going through the patterns, so it was all about technical information, as opposed to how to teach it. And for a lot of people, instructing doesn't come naturally. So it was good to see a couple of people that I thought ran really good international instructors courses, and I'll tell you two of them, because they were all about, you couldn't leave that weekend with your certificate unless you actually were in front of the entire group teaching. One and I've done 3 or 4 of them with him now, is with First Grandmaster Ree. He will get everybody who's doing the IIC with him. You have to get up in front of the group and you have to teach.
Yeah.
So you'll have to do the warm up, you'll have to do stretching, you'll have to teach fundamental movements or patterns, but you have to teach. And he will correct you as you go as well if he feels the need to do that. Another one was hosted by Grandmaster Sutherland, may she rest in peace. It was taught predominantly by Master Thompson, And so this was in Glasgow a couple of years ago. And Master Thompson had put together the program of the IAC, and it was absolutely fantastic. It was everything, how to do a scientific warm-up, stretching out, to how to teach properly. One of the best parts of the course for me was he got us all out to teach as if somebody had a certain disability. So I was actually thrown in the spotlight first. It got easier for people as it went along, but I just happened to be the first to get pulled out. And I had to teach a class as if they were all deaf.
Yeah.
So in other words, I had to teach without speaking.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge. So I taught parallel stance punching without saying a word. And how I did it was totally up to me, but it got me to innovate, and it gave me a whole new perspective on how we can teach using all of our abilities. So it was really good. I think we need more courses like that challenge our preconceptions as to how we can teach.
No, I agree. Many moons ago in my first school, I had a couple, and they were both partially sighted. So as you know, with martial arts classes, the beginners go to the back and they can't see a great deal. So actually, this was going back in 1984, 85. I put them in the front row. So they could just see my shadow and an outline. And they loved it. But what it did for me was it taught me a lot about how to change things. And what I used to do was I used to actually get their arms and put them in position so they could feel what the movement felt like and things like that. So, yeah, I would agree with that. I think, things like that and challenges like that make you certainly a better instructor. And it forces you to learn. Because, as you said before, a lot of the times it isn't them, it's us. That's a hard pill to swallow.
It is.
Yeah. The other thing I learned, sorry, I know I'm spending a lot of time on this, but I wanted to quiz your brain because I know you're sort of knowledgeable on this area. But one thing that I don't know, I'm not quite sure when it dawned on me, but it dawned on me many, many years ago that people learn in different ways. Audio yes. learners, verbal learners, kinesthetic learners, that type of thing. And, I used to stand at the front of the class saying, right, do this, and go, what's wrong with them? Why aren't they doing it? I've just told them, I've showed them. You say, perhaps it's me. So what are your thoughts on that?
I know what you mean. I actually find that, sometimes we take credit ourselves without realizing where the material has come from. My students have made me a better instructor over the years, without a shadow of a doubt. I can't take credit for improving over the years. I have to say it's my students, because they've taught me how to teach them.
Yes.
And I've had to develop 4 or 5 different ways of explaining the exact same thing to students, simply because the student in front of me didn't quite get what I was explaining. So I said, okay, how can I explain this another way? Now I have an arsenal of different ways to explain things, because it's taken over 20 years to get there. But even then, now and again, I'll still have to think, wow, I've explained this to you a few different ways. You're still not getting it. I need to come up with another way. Let me think about this. But it's the students over the last 20 years that have made it easier for me to teach the students of today.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, we'll move on slightly. I will say to anybody listening to this, we'll put perhaps a link to Shane's book, if he's got a link in the show notes. So, take a look at it. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. He's very knowledgeable. And as a martial artist as well, I can understand the situations and the problems that we encounter. The other thing that I like to sort of find out, particularly with somebody who's been doing martial arts a while, is how you fit martial arts and your training into your everyday life at the moment. How do you manage that?
It's a great question. It's actually not the most difficult thing for me, because I'm a full-time instructor, and they say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yes.
So I don't consider it as work. And even though I'm still teaching pretty much the same syllabus, as I was 20 years ago. Still not bored of it. I'd say love what I do. So I teach you, apart from Saturdays, I'm teaching mainly in the evenings. So like yourself, I tend to do my own training in the morning.
Yeah.
I like to have a breakfast first, so I tend to do it later in the morning, but I do it in the morning, and then it's done for the day. And then, in between classes and stuff, I do what the stuff self-employed people have to do. I get all my admin out of the way. But it gives me a chance to read. I like to read a lot of the spiritual teachers like Eckhart Tolle and Anthony DeMello. And I think that as an instructor, that training that side of our art is really, really important. And General Che was a big believer in moral culture. I think it's something that a lot of instructors need to maybe bring more in, is that it's so easy to focus on the te and the quan, but we need to make sure that we are emphasizing the do as well. So in my own training, I do a lot of that side of things as well. And it's a work in progress, believe me.
Yeah, definitely. Oh. Well, I sorry to cut you off. Though. I think while I remember, it's very interesting. When I took my sixth degree under General Che, and I did my patterns, and the night before I was doing all my meanings of my patterns and so on. And then when I went up to the table for questions, he asked me some questions. And one of the things he did say to me, he said, you need to read more about philosophy and things like that. And I did take it to heart, and I did actually go away and I started reading more about the more philosophical side, which actually changed my outlook on martial arts, not just my own martial art, but just martial arts in general. And actually, I think certainly enhanced my teaching. So I don't know whether you found that yourself.
Absolutely. And even when you look at the students, I believe General Che was a big fan of the teachings of Confucius, among others.
Yes.
And when you look at the student's oath, and when it expands, it's a bit like the middle of a circle and then expanding out from there. I observe the stance of Taekwondo, and it finishes with, I will build a more peaceful world. But that Confucian teaching, which was respect in the home for your elders, comes before contributing to your community, your village, and then finally contributing to society as a whole. Very Confucian. What's the word I want to use? Confucianistic, if you like.
Yes.
So, it starts at home, respecting our parents, and then respecting our teachers, and then contributing to society before you can go from there. And I think sometimes we need to look at that as saying that there's no point coming to a martial arts school and saying yes sir and yes miss to your Taekwondo instructor, but then you go at home and you're giving your parents a hard time. It's backwards. It has to start at home, and then from there evolve into your martial arts school and community and so on. And part of that moral culture is just simplifying that,
Yeah, definitely. I'll definitely agree with that. Well, as I mentioned, for myself, when I started martial arts, I found out that for whatever reason, I was quite good at competition, and it suited me. Although I didn't start martial arts to compete, but I ended up as a competitor. But one thing I found, then was once I got into competition and I got into the physical side, that was my focus. My focus is very different now. And throughout these podcasts, I've mentioned I now do meditation, and I do quite a bit of breath work, at home here. Not so much in the class with students, but I do some meditation, and I found that very valuable. And what about yourself? Do you do any of that? Any meditation or breath work, or both?
Both. About 8 or 9 years ago, I was going through quite a stressful time in my life. Don't really need to go through details. Everybody goes through it at some point, but it was quite an acute stressful period, and I discovered that there was a lack in that side of my martial arts training. Sure, I practiced moral culture and all that, but what I didn't do enough of was meditation. Actually, I did none of it, in fact. So I I made the leap. I downloaded an app called Headspace.
Oh yeah, yeah. I've had that one.
And I started following that. That might have come even a couple of years afterwards, but the real development of learning about meditation was I just downloaded an app called Headspace. And I did the 10 days for free, 10 minutes every day. And after about 10 days, I was noticing so much more peace in my mind. So I went and I took on the year subscription and I did the 30-day intro after that. And I stuck with the Headspace app for about 3 years and then it just became a bit repetitive. So I moved on. Now I'm at the point where I actually would do, I'm not a guru or anything, but I would do guided meditations for some of my students and some of my personal training clients when they're stressed out.
Yeah,
And I find it an incredibly valuable tool. And when I would do a meditation with them, I still find that peace of mind comes over me in the moment.
yeah, yeah,
And that's what kind of got me reading the likes of Eckhart Tolle as well. I think too often we sacrifice the present moment because we're worrying about the future and we're still fretting about what's happened in the past.
yeah,
It's gone. And I think if we even brought that into our martial arts classes more and more, a meditation can be as simple as take a breath and just be where you are right now in this moment. That
yeah.
that that can be the simplest meditation ever, in my opinion. And I always say to students, when we're warming up, don't just think about warming up your body. You're not warming up properly if you're thinking about what you're going to be watching on TV when you go home while doing your stretches.
Yes,
Prepare the mind, warm up your mind as well as your body. When we're doing the aerobic part of it, I just want you to focus on, well, what techniques are we going to do today? What are we going to be practicing? I'm getting ready. I'm getting my mind focused, ready to exert myself. When we're doing our stretches, I don't want you thinking about something else. I want you actually put your mind on your body. Concentrate on where you're feeling the stretch. How does it feel? Is it intensity? Is it out of 1 to 10? All these different things. I just want their mind on what they're doing right then. For me, that's a meditation. A lot of people think of a meditation as levitating and their mind are having, an out of body experience. And I
yeah,
think there's still that concept out there. People think meditation is something that they can't do. Meditation can be as simple as take a couple of easy breaths and focus on what you're doing right now.
yeah.
And then you can always do guided meditations and stuff. That's all part of the deal. But I think we need to simplify it. Master David Hodson, I don't know if you're familiar with him or not.
No, no, no.
So he did a wonderful seminar on mindfulness and meditation a few weeks back, and it was really really good. And he it would be I would suggest to people to look him up if they're looking to bring in meditation and mindfulness into their martial arts training, because I
Yeah.
believe he does regular classes in it as well over Zoom, and I know how much you love Zoom, sir. But I would recommend contacting him because he taught it really really well.
Oh, that's quite interesting, and it's good. It's good to hear you say that because I completely agree and concur with everything you said there. And it's funny because I found meditation because of some trauma in my life as well. I was going through a particularly difficult time, and I was finding it hard to sleep actually. So I got into some meditation and some breath work, and then it sort of I thought, wow, this is really good, and then realised that actually meditation and breath work has been a massive part of martial arts ever since martial arts began. But we seem to have sort of well, I think we don't concentrate on that part of it, unfortunately, which is a shame. But as you say, just a couple of minutes will make a massive difference to lots of people. The other thing that I found as well, and this was while I was going through, I don't know if you had an experience of this, was tapping. I don't know if you've heard of tapping. But
Energy tapping, yes.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I started doing that, and I still do it. Not as much as I did, but I started doing energy tapping. And I found that really, really beneficial as well. And from time to time, when I get a little bit stressed, I still use it. I still do some tapping. Similar sort of thing. I got an app, started with that, had some free ones, and then I bought the year subscription. And it's fantastic. I actually use it if I'm a little bit stressed before I go to bed. I use that as well. So I don't know whether obviously you've heard of it, as you say, but I don't know whether you tried anything like
I tried it. I got a couple of books on it. One was called Energy Tapping. I think the other one was called Freedom from Fear Forever, if I remember correctly. I didn't learn effectively from the book, but I got some during that period where I needed a little bit of coaching in that side and on dealing with stress. So I went and I got a few counseling sessions, and he incorporated tapping as part of those sessions with me. That I found beneficial when I was taught by an actual person. I didn't get it from the books, unfortunately.
that.
So, but I was glad to get the opportunity to learn it face to face from someone, because I could see it can work if you know how to apply it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's funny because, like I said, all these things to me are all part of us as individuals. I don't separate them. But the other thing I was going to ask you about was any diet or food regimes. I've been exploring a meat-based diet and eating nose to tail, eating particularly quite a large amount of liver, and I found that certain changes in my physical ability has been very, very noticeable. I feel a bit stronger. I actually digest animal products really well. I've always had a problem with digestion, and plants, for whatever reason, don't seem to agree with me. It's only recently I found that out, but I seem to really, my body seems to really work well on animal-based products, and that's when it goes in, and also when it comes out. So it's very noticeable. But how about yourself? Do you have any sort of regimes that you stick to, or
I'm a big believer in the JERF diet. I don't know. Excuse me. Now I have to apologize. Clear my throat. Excuse me. I'm a big believer in the JERF diet. JERF. It stands for Just Eat Real Food.
Ah, right. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what? I know this is a bit of a stereo. It's a commonly used expression, but everything in moderation, especially moderation.
Moderation, yeah.
We can have a balanced diet. So I think people's bodies tend to let them know when they're eating well or not. Yes. If you spring out of bed in the morning, that's a great sign. If you crawl out of bed in the morning, that's a bad sign. If I enjoy a bar of chocolate, I enjoy a bag of crisps occasionally. I'm partial to a pint of Guinness.
Yes.
But those things aren't daily. They're occasional. So as long as you do the daily stuff, I think that's important. So, in other words, get a good mix of your protein, get your fruits and vegetables. Don't go crazy on the grains, and just minimize the two most heavily processed foods, which are dairy and wheat.
Yes.
Most allergies are dairy and wheat, so they're highly processed typically. So if just people minimize their dairy and wheat, I'm not saying you have to cut, unless you're actually allergic to it, should need to cut it out entirely, but just to minimize it, get plenty of fruits and vegetables. And I teach this to all my Taekwondo students as well. And especially for the kids, I simplify it. Talk about the rainbow. The rainbow is all these different colors. Yeah. And I say minimum get 3 different colors of the rainbow per day. And ideally get 5, but minimum 3. So sometimes they'll have cucumber, say celery, and say green pepper. And I'd say, that's great now, you've had 3 vegetables, but they're all the same color.
Yes.
So you still have 2 colors to hit. So what we do is I give them a project and we do a chart. So if I could just emphasize this on the children, because I find anything that works with children will work with adults, but the other way around isn't the case.
Yeah.
So I get kids to do a chart. So let's do all the different colors and list off as many fruits and vegetables as they can in each color. And then what happens is they've got this huge chart of fruits and vegetables with stuff in there they would never have thought of eating, but they actually realize, I can do this. So what we oftentimes say to the parents is, if you want the children to eat more fruits and veg, get them involved in the decision making. So let's say the parents are going to choose the color, but let the children choose what they get out of that color in their
Right.
lunchbox.
Okay. Yeah.
And now the parents have made sure they're picking the 3, 4, 5 colors, but the kids are picking what vegetables and fruits they're eating from that selection. So they are involved in the decision-making process, and so they buy into it a lot easier, and everybody's happy.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice. Well, we're sort of coming to the end of this podcast, but I want to ask you, really, going back to the sort of the martial arts side, what you believe. I mean, I can probably guess, and I'm sure people that have been doing martial arts a long time could probably guess, but what you feel martial arts has done for you and given you, as you've been doing it, as you started, as you've gone through, and so on. So, yeah, what has it done for you?
In a sense, it's probably done the most important thing that I think any of us as human beings could ask for, and it's given me my purpose. And I'd like to elaborate on that for a moment if we have time.
Yes, we do.
I believe we have an inner and an outer purpose. The inner purpose is whatever we were born on this earth to do, whatever your personal belief might be. Okay? So, and then our outer purpose is, well, what are we going to do to survive and help us to live until we fulfill that inner purpose? When the two come together, I think that is everything. So I think my inner purpose, and the reason I think this is because I'm never more at peace than when I'm teaching students and helping them to move from where they are in life to where they want to be. And sometimes I only get to do this for 3 months, and sometimes I get to do this for 12, 15, 20 years. Yeah. Depends. Students get what they need from you, and then they move on. I had to learn that along the way. So my inner purpose, I firmly believe, is to teach, to help other people. Okay. And my outer purpose has been to be able to, provide a livelihood for myself through martial arts. So they've actually worked together, and so martial arts has given me everything. And I'm extremely grateful. I'm extremely grateful to the instructor that brought me to black belt. I'm extremely grateful for all the mentors that I've had over the years, and I've had many mentors, yourself included, sir. And I'm very grateful, to everybody who's contributed to that journey. So, yeah, I think the answer is, what has martial arts given me? It's given me everything. And if I could maybe just leave this nugget for the instructors who are listening, because there might be instructors who are only going a few years. And I had to learn this myself. Students will come and go along the way. And sometimes as instructors, we get frustrated because the student's been, maybe they got to blue belt and they decided to quit or whatever. But I realized some time ago, students come to you for different reasons, and they come for different things. Sometimes they need to be with you for 10 years to get what they needed in their area, in their life, to move forward. But sometimes they get it after 3 or 6 months and they're ready to move on. And I think as instructors, if we realize that, wow, I might actually only have 3 months with this student. If I knew I could only teach them for 3 months, how differently would I teach them than if I assume I have them for 10 years?
Yes.
We can make them. It changes our perception entirely. It changes our approach as an instructor. If when the student comes in the door,